Christian Bale, Empath, Narcissist, or Something Else, Part 3. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We are analysing Christian Bale. We're now going to look at his intimate relationships. Similar to familial relationships, the scrutiny of romantic, intimate relationships of the subject proves particularly insightful. Often, with a narcissist, we see an individual that has had a number, and sometimes extensive number, of intimate relationships. Sometimes they can be short in nature. Sometimes there can be infidelity, and sometimes there can be reports of abusive behavior within those relationships. The presence of fewer relationships often points to a less narcissistic individual, but not entirely, because even if there might be other narcissistic indicators in other aspects of that person's life, the fact that they have only been known for being with one person could be a narcissist that operates with a particularly good facade, and their indiscretions are never known about, as they ensure that that information is kept quiet. As I regularly point out, you cannot make a determination from one aspect of an individual's life alone. You need to interpret it all in the round. So, for example, a person who appears on the face of it to have a long-standing relationship for decades, at first blush may not be a narcissist, because more usually, narcissists have a series of different relationships with reports of tempestuous behavior, possible overlap, and infidelities. However, where that individual is demonstrated to be a narcissist in respect of other aspects of their life, you would then ask, well, given the fact that we've proven that they're a narcissist because of other factors, how is it that they're able to have such a stable relationship with that person for decades? The fact is, they probably don't, but we've not been able to see it. A more evolved narcissist may treat their partner in a less tempestuous manner, having a greater level of control. It may be that they do treat them particularly badly, but nobody gets to hear about it because this more evolved narcissist is much better at presenting a facade to the world and covering up the behaviours in relation to their intimate partner. Thus, it's always important to keep in mind the difference of interpretation that can occur with regard to the information. What about Christian Bale? Is he known for being a bit of a Casanova, or is he a stable family man? Well, in terms of his romantic relationships, way back in 1987, when he was just 13, he went on a date with Drew Barrymore, who you also know as a young actor. Both were emerging child actors in Hollywood, and their brief encounter was a casual, youthful interaction as opposed to a serious relationship. Interestingly, in interviews, both have reminisced fondly about the date, with Drew Barrymore noting in a 2012 interview that she had big problems in her life at the time, making boys very secondary. The date didn't lead, as you would expect, to a long-term relationship. The interaction was described as amicable and nostalgic by both parties, with no evidence of conflict or abuse. It clearly reflected the Hollywood circles in which young actors moved, but it certainly doesn't provide us with any determinative information about his conduct in relationships. In 1992, when he was aged 18, Christian Bale was briefly linked to the actress Ellie Keats. It was described as short-lived, with no specific details on how they met or the nature of their connection. Keats, known for roles in films like The Rocketeer, was part of the same Hollywood scene as Bale. The relationship ended the same year and received minimal media attention. Again, there were no reports, although limited information exists, of acrimony or abuse within this relationship. It was brief, which might suggest a disposable attitude towards the relationship, but that might not necessarily come from Bale's side. Next, when Bale was 20, he began dating actress Samantha Mathis in 1994 while working on Little Women. Interestingly, they came together later as she played Courtney in American Psycho. But at that juncture, in 1994, they began dating while working on a film together. That shows a difficulty with boundary recognition as a consequence of the fact that their professional interaction turned into a romantic one. Now, plenty of people meet their romantic partners through work, and that doesn't mean that necessarily either of them is a narcissist. However, the fact that this occurs in a working relationship is a transgression of a boundary and is an indicator rather than determinative. They dated for around about a year, with the relationship ended in 1995. Again, a short-lived relationship between Bale and somebody else. Once again, there were no public reports of acrimony or abuse. The relationship purportedly ended amicably, and neither actor has referenced any issues from this period of time. When he was aged 24, Bale dated British actress Anna Friel in 1998 after meeting on the set of A Midsummer's Night Dream in 1999, which came out in 1999, where he played Demetrius. Again, notice the transgression of the boundary of professional relationship becoming romantic. Their relationship again lasted less than a year, ending in 1999. Friel, known for Pushing Daisies and Marcella, was a rising star at the time. The relationship was described as brief, and once again, there was no suggestion of acrimony. Friel hasn't commented particularly about the relationship, and nor has Bale. And this occurred just before Bale's breakout adult role in American Psycho, which marked a pivotal career moment. So far, 3 relationships, excluding the one involving Barrymore, because that was when he was a child, all of them brief, but with notable gaps in between them of 2 years and 3 years, which tends to suggest a lack of the necessity of always being in an intimate relationship. Or it might be that they exist, but Bale kept them quiet, or that he is a narcissist that doesn't always need an intimate partner primary source, which suggests a more extensive fuel matrix, whereby he can rely upon other people without needing always an intimate primary source. Mainly lesser and mid-range narcissists do need an intimate partner primary source because it's far easier for them to achieve the prime aims with them. But when it comes to graters, there isn't always necessarily one present, and this could potentially be an early indicator of Bale being a greater narcissist, whereby he has short relationships and perhaps loses interest in them rather quickly, that he has a high level of control and maintains an excellent facade so that there's no complaints about him mistreating the individuals, and that he is able to cope with a gap in between. We then move on to the longest relationship that Bale has had. When he was 25, Bale started dating Sibby Blazek. They were introduced through Winona Ryder, for whom Blazek worked as a personal assistant. Blazek, a former model, makeup artist and stunt driver of Serbian descent, bonded with Bale over shared interests. Might that be mirroring or simply legitimate shared interests? They eloped in Las Vegas on January 29th, 2000. Accordingly, this points to a swift marriage in less than a year of meeting and dating, which, as you know, the occurrence of a swift marriage is often an indicator of a narcissist as a consequence of the necessity of bringing an individual under control. Nevertheless, the two of them have been married for over 25 years, making them one of Hollywood's most enduring couples. They have 2 children, Luca, who was born in 2005, and Joseph, who was born in 2014. Bale has praised Blazik as the strongest woman I've ever come across, and credits her for changing his negative views on marriage, shaped by his parents' 1991 divorce. Blazik has also worked as a stunt driver on The Dark Knight Rises in 2012, chasing Bale's Batman in a police car, which he jokingly said terrified him. Their relationship is one of low profile, with only occasional public appearances, such as a 2019 bike ride for their 19th anniversary and a 2023 family trip to Italy for Luca's Dolce & Gabbana runway walk. There have been no reports of acrimony or abuse in their relationship. Bale has consistently spoken glowingly of Blazik, emphasising her strength and their strong partnership. Their long marriage, private lifestyle, and mutual professional involvement, for instance stunt work, suggests a stable, supportive relationship. The family feud that I alluded to in part 2 involved Bale's mother and sister, reportedly triggered by a dispute related to Blazik. But this may well have been indicative of Bale exhibiting emotional empathy in defending his wife. He has remained married to her for a considerable period of time. And in the circumstances, what we have with Bale is an individual who has only had 4 documented romantic relationships as an adult. There are no reports of poor behaviour, no reports of infidelity. 3 of those relationships were short in nature. And the one that endures to this day is one that has been marked by low profile, privacy, an absence of accusations of infidelity, an absence of any evidence of mistreatment. And in such circumstances, unless one was dealing with a particularly evolved narcissist who was able to assert a considerable amount of control to ensure that poor behaviour is kept hidden, and that the intimate partner primary source remains ensnared because of the very many benefits that are provided, this may well point to an individual who is entirely capable of having healthy, mutually respectful relationships. It's certainly the case that the usual tempestuous roller coaster nature of intimate relationships is absent. Bale, who, on the face of it, is clearly a good-looking man who is well off, is not somebody who is known for having a string of sexual encounters. He has dated individuals that have worked in the industry, which is indicative of a transgression of a boundary, but also it is to be expected, as that's where he works, that is where he's most likely to meet a partner. Accordingly, some useful insights that are drawn in respect of the life of Christian Bale from his intimate relationships. Join me in part 4 as we examine more of his life.